So I'm sure everyone's spent some time in Geowarehouse whenever doing a listing and all that, but has anyone looked at the extra tools that are involved with Geowarehouse beyond just looking at the title itself? You can just chime in if you want.
You mean it using Geowarehouse?
Yeah, so you can look at title, but there are a couple tools to help you with your business as well and looking at analytics.
No, haven't done that.
It is sometimes they're hard to find. I will admit it took me a while.
Okay.
Share my screen.
Is that the ones that you can purchase?
Sorry?
Is that the ones that you can purchase?
So you can buy your mortgage charge, your parcel register. That is one thing you can do that is helpful.
Right.
That's one of the main ones. There's a couple other things that are very helpful when doing your research. So obviously we're used to, so I'll just take a property I know. So one's Sherman, standard look. When we're looking at it this way, looking at the property reports, everyone kind of gets the breakdown of this. You can see where the last sale or the transfer of ownership was, get your lot size. They've recently updated it to now include, for most areas, trying to scroll here, but the tax estimates, so you don't actually have to get a tax bill usually now. So it's in this midsection.
Oh, cool.
Here. But beneath it is the structure, and you'll get the date the building was built. So original construction, how many rooms, all that. Sometimes it takes a while for it to update based on MPAC. And if they didn't get permits, they did, you'll see it change based on that. You get a breakdown of all your assessment role, your legal description. It's now kind of more compact and easy to find for each listing. But as we talked about, as you mentioned, was this parcel register here. Yeah. Now, this is when you have a client that maybe you're worried because they're financially stressed. This would be a good thing to check on. It's a pretty small fee to make sure that they're not over leveraged with their mortgage. So you can actually buy this report, and it would tell you how many mortgages or how many liens they have on the property or against the property. So if you were going to, say, list it and they were over leveraged on the property, there's a chance you might not get paid in the end, because the first mortgage always gets paid first. Second, all those things get paid out before you get paid. So knowing when someone seems like they are too financially stressed, if they're underwater, it can save you big time. I remember last year I was dealing with the brokerage I was with. They had someone trying to list their property for $7 million, but they owed $14 million on the property. So they mortgaged it, then they mortgaged against it to buy 2 more properties, and they were completely underwater, and then the market started to tank. And so they offered to give us 3%, like us 3 and the buyer side 3%. But on looking at that, there was no way we were going to get paid. So this 37 or like 35.50 saved us from putting in thousands and thousands of dollars of marketing, photos, and all that to just potentially not get paid. And who knows? I think the listing might actually still not be sold, and it's a power of sale.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's just so much money out on it. When you, this is good for another reason when you're doing your research of the area, is it has these layers here that you can toggle on and off if you want to know more about a specific area. Like if you have a listing or you've done a listing presentation and you want to know what that area looks like in terms of average sales price, you can toggle that on, and it's a heat map. So let's see. We'll zoom out a bit. It lets me. And you have to be not too far zoomed out, but now you get this heat map here where it allocates a value to each area. So it segments it in certain pockets, and you can see the average sale price. And that's all aggregated by Terranet, which created Geowarehouse. So you can go and see, if you're looking in this pocket here, you see the average sale price is $646, and you can look around the area and see kind of how it differs, especially when you're looking for comps. So I find this to be valuable if you want to look for areas that, well, if you look at these two areas, the difference between that's a $200,000 gap between just a couple streets over and that, right? So you might not want to take comps in that pocket if that whole area is selling a lot lower. Another tool that I use a lot is it helps with your, if you want to geofarm or if you want to kind of target areas, you can see the turnover rate. So the annual turnover rate is how many times properties in that area or percentage of the properties have changed ownership over the last year. So in this, you see this area has a low turnover rate. There's a lot less houses. So each house sold will be a higher percentage. But if you're seeing things in a low area, maybe it's due to turnover, or you have a lot of people leaving that area and it might be a great area to farm for listings. So when you do your lettered campaigns, your door knocking, sure, Bridget, you've used it for door knocking in that sense, right?
Yeah, that's how I actually picked my farm area between my house and Kingston. Was I only looked at the market turnover and then just picked then just started to farm that section.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically you'll get a lot of the mentality of people's neighbors when they see a house sell, they're like, well, I wonder what it sold for. They'll look it up online and be like, oh, it sold for that much. Maybe it's time to think about it myself. And so the signs of, like, say this 5%, it sounds low, but it's a really good turnover. You might have a lot of people who are now interested in making that, listing it because, well, they see all this happening and people successfully selling. The motivation might be higher in that area than somewhere like over here. So that's kind of the way I like to look at it, and it's a good way to figure out your pockets or your areas. You can toggle between your different time periods, your different types of properties. So it's condo, freehold, over the last 5 years. You can just show how you want to look at it.
How did you get that screen with those colors?
So yeah, when you're in your Geowarehouse, once again,
Right.
100%. It's
And
these
you don't
buttons.
need to be in a specific address.
No,
The
you
way
don't.
he's in a now, you don't need to be in a specific address.
Okay.
So these floating buttons here give you the option to toggle some tools here. So this one here is the map layers. So you can also change how you see the lines too, like to separate it by lot and concession. Because sometimes you have people with multiple pins on a property. Sometimes
Right.
you want a whole lot concession. But then here, this block heat map is the one that adds those colored sections for average sales growth rate and whatnot. Another one would be rental percentage. You might want to look at to see if maybe someone doesn't want to live in an area with a high renting percentage. Because, let's be honest, more than half of people today are renting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
renters aren't inclined to take good care of a property they don't plan on staying at forever. So I've had clients who don't want to be in a high rental area. So you look for the lowest possible, right?
Right.
And this will give you a pretty high indication. So this one over here is 90%, but I believe there's a condo building in there, which makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a good knowledge base to have, especially when you're trying to work in the best interest of your client. So another tool that I do like to use when I'm searching for comparables and there's not a lot to compare with, they
Yes.
actually have the ability to search comparables. The only issue is that you don't get the sense of when it was agreed upon, like the purchase and sale. And that does make a difference because if you take something that was, say, bought 3-4 months ago, that was in a down market, but it only closed now. So they bought lower than it would be now. So it would have gained value, but it only puts the closing date as the purchase date, right? So say I'm looking at variables in the area. So the sale date is really the closing date. So as it's transitioned in title, it's not the date in which they agreed to purchase the property, which that might be more important to what the value might have been at the time, right? Because sometimes you have clients buy 3, 4, 5 months out. Sometimes you have a 2-week closing, but this is your closing date as opposed to the day you decide to purchase. So using that in conjunction with the HPI to get values can be helpful, but you just have to understand the difference between the two. But yeah, you can go in and look at the history of these properties just by clicking on the pin. It'll bring you to that property report there and go through the history and everything. The fourth tool that I like to use, and I use for almost every listing, is the impact property line. So you can actually, oh, my profile's not set up, but for the purpose of, I'll explain it. So you can go into the impact property line and you can basically order reports that give you your permits that have been requested on the property, what's still open, what's closed. You can, I think it's $7 to $9 to get the floor area space. If they don't have one on there and you need it, generally speaking, you can't use the impact floor area space for your listings, but not everyone gets floor plans. So generally it's pretty accurate, but they don't want you to lean on using those. Another tool, now let's change spots again, is this school map. You can find the schools in the area based, so this is through HoodQ. We all get a free membership through Geowarehouse to use these. And so this will help you find the catchment for all the schools, find out what school you're dealing with, and get more information on it. This is a smaller piece to a bigger tool that helps with your area reports as well. But if you ever have any doubts about schools when you're doing a listing, this is a great way to do it quickly without going through the school board itself, right? Further to that, let's find this.
Because I've actually had clients before that have only wanted to stay in the exact same school district as their kids. And
Yeah.
so I modeled my entire search like
Based
all
on
like the road, instead of just like doing a circle or like a general. I was like, I don't even want them to see anything that's outside of those boundaries.
And especially since it's not a required field to put in. And that's one thing I liked about Matrix is it had the fields for schools where Realm doesn't. And they should add it because that's a big consideration for families. Like if I'm doing it, I want to look at the school I want my kids to go to because I'm doing it now. Cross boundary is annoying. Dealing with them every step of the turn, like every step of the way to get your kids where you want them to be. So we're in Marysville and our kids are in Napanee, and we had to jump through some hoops to get them into Selby. So this way you don't have to rely on the information you get from the listing agent. You are now equipped with all that information. You can go back to your client with confidence that you know the answer, right? So I'm going to pull up the rest of HoodQ because it is a tool I like to use for every listing. I'll show you kind of every time you go through one of these listings on Realm, in this midsection area, you have all your attachments, but these links have a lot of valuable information. But this neighborhood guide or address guide is also powered by the same tool, the HoodQ, through Geowarehouse, and it can give you plenty of great information on the property. So I use it for every listing. Give it a second to load, but so basically, you don't have to do as much research on what's going on in the neighborhood because this already aggregates it for you, and you can download it as a PDF to send off to them. So as you're going through this, you can see it's interactive, but you can find the school that the property is in that catchment. You can go right to that school's website through the link. You can get a detailed report on them. It's got where the closest hospital, fire station, all that involved. And you can just go ahead and save it, share it, print it, and that is a resource for your clients. If you want a little bit more than this, you can go into the detailed report, which then talks a little more about the schools. So you can so your clients can do their research on the schools they want to be involved with. And all of that's easy to just send off. There's access to a map, which I don't know why it's not zooming out for me properly. This mess is a nightmare. Then there's you can access the full school report, go through it. Now sometimes so the neighborhood that they should be expanding it out to this area, but coming from the GTA, there was a lot more extensive information between the GTA. There should be more coming, but you can just search each individual address as you need it, and it'll have ample information for it. It's as easy as getting to this section here, and you would just type the address in and click from there. So if I said property we were looking at earlier in the street, drop down, finds it. As soon as you click it, it will build your report. So now I have all that information that I can send off to my client. So if I wanted to save and print, you don't see it here, but just click the save and you just save as PDF and you have that. You can share your email through a link. The link's probably the best one because it's interactive for them as well. If you save it as a PDF, it doesn't have that same usability. But, all right. So did anyone have any other questions or any things they want to know about with Geowarehouse that can help?
No.
By a bunch.
I actually just wanted to make a comment about the heat map. When I'm looking at turnover in areas, I always compare, I'm probably a little too detailed about it, but I wanted to make sure where I was going was good. I always compare the date range to see if the trending turnover rate is declining or increasing if I'm going to farm that area. So it may be, 5% today or like right now, but maybe it was, 7% 5 years ago, and it's slowly been decreasing over the time.
Yeah.
I know that maybe I'm a little, well, 5 would still be good, but I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at different areas, or you can sometimes see them increase and you're like, this might be a trending area where the turnover is starting to kind of amp up a bit. Maybe this is where I should be putting in my efforts and my time.
Yeah.
And a great thing to do would just be to snap a screenshot of it. Almost every Windows, Chrome OS, and Mac all have pretty easy screen capture. I would just snap all those, and then you could just put them right into a document or into a Google Keep note, and then just log them in as different areas so you have them side by side instead of trying to swap back and forth. So you can catalog it. Yeah.
And I actually take a screen grab of the average price when I do a CMA, especially when people are like, well, the house over 4 streets ago sold for $899, and why aren't we? And it's like, well, I'm glad that you asked. And I pull it up and I can show them the exact areas and average prices.
Yeah, exactly. And while being prepared is the best way to combat everything, you don't want to start trying to talk through a loop when you don't have the information in front of you, or at least the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because even you just don't sound like you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is a good point too about checking the declining aspect of it. If things are starting to slow down and turnovers change drastically from so many years ago till now, or even from a year ago to 6 months, you might see that people are settling in, and it might be a long time till it returns to that turnover. But the more you know about it and the more you log, you can kind of base it off that. Is there any kind of information people want to know how to find on Geowarehouse? Like, as you go through here, you can find your acreage just by going to this section here. It says your lot area, acreage, all your measurements, so you have those for your listing. Sometimes they don't populate when you importing, all that stuff. You get your zoning here. Depending on the city, it might not be updated properly, but it's generally pretty accurate. It's good to take note of the zoning every time you're doing it, because something like this, like R1-3, might mean that there's a provision that might stop potential buyers from doing something they want to do with the property. If they wanted to put like an addition and that provision prohibits it, that's something that's good to know, right? When we're dealing with assessed value, it's also another way you could calculate the taxes. If you can find the mill rate for the township, multiplying the assessed value by the mill rate will always get you your exact taxes, and it's within pennies. That you can find the entire history of disposition of the property as you go here to this midsection here. So like looking at this one, as you can see, it was originally bought in 1987. So so go back here, built in 1972. So the first time it was sold after it was built was 87 for 105,000, and sold again in 2022 for 597, 661. One thing to note, that if you see one that says $0, $1, or $2, it means that it was just a transfer of name. And it's just putting in consideration. So if someone, say somebody was taking off this mortgage here, you would see a 1, 2, or a 0 in there. It doesn't mean that it was sold for $0. If you see something like half the price, so if you're going from 661 and then suddenly you see a transfer of like 330,000, usually that's a spouse buying out the other spouse. It doesn't mean it was sold for that much. It just means that was the amount consideration
Right.
for that buyout. So you can understand more why it is. If someone looks and says, oh, well, why did it sell for 300,000? Now they want 1.2. You're like, well, the value is really 660,000, and go from there, right? Or when they bought. So here, if you ever need to get a plan of subdivision or a survey yourself, you can order them straight through Geowarehouse. Generally speaking, the seller should have one, but if not, this is another way you do it. That price, you may not want to put that cost yourself. But it says there 500. I thought it was cheaper before, but you can get the whole plan of subdivision, the survey, should you need to. Don't think there's any other main tools you'll use. Buyer's report would be everything you can kind of get through Geowarehouse, with your easements, your parcel register, everything, and your residential location reports, all that in a package there for them. Generally speaking, I've never used one of them before, but I think that's all stuff you can collect yourself. And there's, these relocation reports, which just kind of give you ideas of the area. Then this little section of HUD Q, which is just a quick overview of the area. We don't need to buy these, as they're free if we go right into HUD Q. And then you get into the demographics of your neighborhood. You can see what the percent ownership is, rental. So the area that this one is in is 100% owned, so that's good to know. You can see the average age of home, so between 1961 and 1990, the allotment of properties, and then the average household income, stuff like that. People might be interested in, not often they are, but sometimes that conversation comes up and you like to have the tools to know. I think that about sums it up. So if anyone has any questions, by all means. No, nobody.
Actually, I just have one question. On
Yeah.
the AVM comparable report that you can purchase,
Yep.
I purchased one for the one house that I was checking out for my
Yep.
clients. Anyways, I was just curious what the real-time AVM amount means.
So it would be the adjusted value basically. So what it's using is their information, their log values, and it's just giving an adjusted value based on those. I wouldn't lean too hard into something that's automated like that, because you're supposed to be the expert and be able to tell the difference. This can't go in and see the difference between higher end finishes or if the property is dilapidated. It's just averaging things out, like number of beds, number of baths, and things in the area. So you're better off to do a CMA through, say, Realm yourself and pick proper comparables, because there will be a larger margin of error or a range of potential value using this.
Right.
So you're better off to trust your instincts and take a little extra time and find the properties that are almost complete one-to-one matches, because you're doing them a disservice if we rely on these things specifically. It's a good
Yeah.
starting point.
Yeah, I was just curious what it was and what was in it. So
Yeah. So it's just using, basically the change in values over time and the comparables in the area to try and give a value associated with it. But it's merely a starting point. And I think the HPI, if you've ever used HPI, is probably a better guide for you.
Okay.
But hopefully that answered that. Jennifer, do you have any questions?
No, I'm kind of exploring it now because I haven't been all that, I haven't used it all that much. So I really should get in there now and sort of explore and, like I knew about the different things that you could pay for, but I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, like the heat map and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Had no training on it. So that just what you just did today is exciting.
Yeah, and knowledge is your biggest tool
Yeah.
to getting more business and to be trusted by them. We don't want to get fired by a client because we didn't know something or we didn't know the area that well. So
Yeah.
it's all right here at our fingertips, and it's generally no extra cost, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of it.
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Underutilized, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Shelley, did you have any questions?
Nope, that's very informative though. I usually just print off the property, like the client report. And so to know that there's extra tools, that's great.
And I would definitely use that PDF version. Like if you're doing your CMAs or your presentations, I would definitely use that as part of it. It's valuable to have all that information in there.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
no problem. Turn off the recording.